This is the Cortez City Council regular meeting. Today is Tuesday, July 25th, 2023, and the time is 7:30 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Linda, can we have the roll call?
Kiefhofer.
Here.
DeHaven.
Here.
Spruill.
Here.
Rainey.
Here.
Yazzie.
Here.
Dobry.
Here.
Medina.
Here. All right, and then I'll ask for approval of the agenda. Would anyone like to make any amendments to the agenda at large or approve as is?
I move that council approve the agenda for July 25th, 2023.
Second.
Motion made by DeHaven and seconded by Rainey.
DeHaven.
Aye.
Yazzie.
Aye.
Rainey.
Aye.
Dobry.
Aye.
Kiefhofer.
Aye.
Spruill.
Yes.
Medina.
Aye. Okay, we're going to move on to number 2 on our agenda, the consent agenda. The listing under consent agenda is a group of items to be acted on with a single motion and vote. This agenda is designed to expedite the handling of limited routine matters by City Council, either by the public or a council. By City Council. Either the public or a council member may request that an item may be removed from the consent agenda at that time prior to council's vote. I'll read the consent agenda and then I'll give space to see if anyone would like something to remove. A is approval of the council work session and agenda minutes for July 11th, 2023. B, approval of the expenditure list for July 25th, 2023. C, approval of a retail marijuana store license application from Green Kiwi 4 LLC, DBA Livewell, located at 1819 East Main Street, Cortez. D, approval of a renewal application for a medical marijuana center / on-site optional premises cultivation license for Durango Organics LLP, DBA Dio Cortez, located at 1013 East Main Street, Cortez. E, approval of a renewal tavern liquor license and change in corporation structure for Cortez Elks Lodge 1789 Inc., DBA Cortez Elks 1789, located at 2100 North Dolores Road, Cortez. F, approval of a renewal hotel and restaurant liquor license for Once Upon LLC, DBA Once Upon a Sandwich, located at 7 West Main Street, Cortez. And G, approval of a renewal arts liquor license for the Cortez Center, Inc., DBA Cortez Cultural Center, located at 25 North Market Street, Cortez. Would any council members or the public like to see an item removed or approve the consent agenda as presented?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Dobry, seconded by Kiefhofer.
Rainey.
Aye.
Kiefhofer.
Aye.
DeHaven.
Aye.
Yazzie.
Aye.
Dobry.
Aye.
Spruill.
Yes.
Medina.
Aye. Okay, we're going to move on to public participation. There is no limit to the number of speakers, although public comment will be held to an overall time limit of 30 minutes. Speakers have a time limit of 3 minutes per person, may only speak once, and may not cede time to another commenter. Linda's going around to see if we have comments in the comment box. And remember, this time is for anything that's not on the public hearing portion of our agenda. Any public comment tonight? Okay. We'll close the public participation portion and we'll move on to 4 on our agenda of presentations. 4A is our 2023 June financial statements, presented by Kelly Koski, our finance director.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In your packet for this meeting were the financial statements for June of 2023. One of the things that I like to do as I'm reviewing the financial statements is I use that column that's to the very far right, that is the percentage of budget that's been spent for the year in comparison with how far along we are in the year. And a couple of things stood out as I was reviewing the month of June. If you look at the Street Improvement Enterprise Fund on page 31, looks like they so far have only spent 12% of their budget. You think, wow, what's going on there? So they do have projects that were budgeted for the summer of 2023. The main one being the Cedar Street project that they have started work on. We've made some very few payments on that so far, but we're hoping that that will be complete before the snow flies this year. Also over in the Equipment Enterprise Fund, which you'll find on page 35, it looks like 31.7% of that budget has been spent so far for the year, but we do have equipment that's been ordered that we are waiting for, that we are in high hopes that we'll receive before the end of the year. Does anybody have any questions?
Do we know if either of them are going to go over their budget this year?
You know, I don't believe so far. You know, the project that is over on Cedar Street is really just getting started. I know that we haven't had any change orders for that yet, but it is early in that construction phase. And as far as I know, I have not heard of any additional costs for the equipment that we have on order, so hopefully not.
Any other questions from council? All right, thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Okay, we're going to move on to 4B on our agenda, the City Council Chambers AV options.
Okay, so in your packet for this evening were some considerations for the City Council Chambers AV equipment. As you recall, in our 2023 budget, we did have approved $86,734 to replace equipment for this room. At this point, no new equipment has been ordered, and we've also taken into consideration with this slide presentation this evening a lower cost option, which I like to call the pivot. So in the previous, there were only 3 options, but the considerations for this evening, there's actually 4. And we're just asking for council guidance regarding the level and the quality of the user experience for our residents when they're accessing our meeting videos. So when we talk about the AV equipment here in the council chambers, I feel like the 3 considerations that are the most important are cost, of course, because that's what the numbers of people do, flexibility, and also what really is going to fit our needs for the city of Cortez. So option number 1, which is what I call the pivot option, we actually switched to using a laptop to stream to the YouTube. It would have 2 cameras that would have a split view of the room. So instead of the 3 cameras that we have now, there'd just be 2 stationary cameras, and it requires no outside support. It would operate completely without the console and the server stack that we have back in the control room. So as we move on to option number 2, option number 2 keeps us with the control center, the control panel, the server stack. We would still have 3 cameras that we could use for a full room view, and it would include 1 year of outside support that's during our business hours. As we move into option number 3, really the difference with that is that this would include the council tablets that are at the dais for voting. So each one of you at the dais would have a tablet that not only would record the votes so that Linda could use those in the meeting minutes, but they would also help you follow along in the agenda so that it would be easy for you to tell where we were at as we move through the agenda. It would actually have the agenda on the tablet, and it would mark off a little green X for each item that we've passed as we go through the meeting, so that could be helpful. I know sometimes trying to run a meeting, there's a lot going on and a lot of movement with that process. And that would also include a year of outside support, but only during business hours. And then option number 4, which is really the most expensive option, not only would that include the council tablets at the dais, but it would also be able to integrate with our Agenda Quick software, which is the software that we load all of the agenda items, all of the attachments, all of the memos, and that's how our city clerk, Linda, is able to get that out to you in such an organized and timely manner. And that would also include 24-hour, 7-day-a-week outside support for the first year. And that would also still stay with the control panel in the back and also the server stack that we have. So, when we think about what is it that we really do need for the city of Cortez, I feel like we need a cost-efficient way to give the public access to the council meetings. We need a system that's going to be reliable, and we also need a system that can be flexible with our changing needs, whether that is to grow and add on, or whether that is to take away and go smaller, depending on budget constraints and what the council really feels comfortable with using. So,
I have a few functionality and like questions, and then I'll let the rest of council ask what they think as well. But which of these options, if any, allow a hybrid meeting? So if, say, we have someone from the state who wants to, present at our meeting, but instead of traveling, we can Zoom them in and they can be a virtual participant. Or if a council member is traveling and wants to still participate, do any of these allow that? The other thing is presentations. Will we be able to change the view? Because watching a video and having a camera zoom in onto a TV to show the presentation, the resolution is not there. It's just, it just doesn't work well.
right. So all of these options, you would have you'd have the option of the hybrid meeting, and then with all of the options, you'd also be able, I couldn't guarantee that the camera quality on option 1 would be better than what we already have, but the cameras would be stationary, so they wouldn't be moving from, say, from over where Patrick's at, back over to the TV, back over to the dais, and back over here. It'd just be 2 cameras that are set in the back of each side of the room, and they would be stationary at all times.
Yeah, I guess I'm asking, like, the most effective way to, like, display the meeting, is having 3 different views to switch from. You have, a speaker over there, and then us. You can switch between those 3 views quickly on the feed, and then you can switch to a 4th view, which is whatever computer is plugged in, and actually have the presentation on the screen, not having to zoom a camera into a TV.
Right. So you'd be able to do that with option number 2, but that would not be available with option number 1.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay, sorry, just council.
that's okay.
So that would be available to options 2 to 4 then?
It would be,
Okay,
yes.
and then our options 2 to 4, would that be the same company?
They wouldn't. They would be
Okay.
different companies. When we went out for bid for this originally, we had companies that were able to offer the full scale, integrate with Agenda Quick, have the tablets at the dais, but there was a different company that was not able to integrate with Agenda Quick, but could provide the tablets at the dais. So it's 2 different companies.
Okay, and then is the video quality the same for options 2 to 4?
The video quality would be better, the more expensive option that you choose. But I guess you have to decide, do we need do we need a Hollywood movie video out on YouTube, or is the B-grade movie gonna work okay?
How does the quality compare to the quality we have on YouTube now?
So the quality that we have on YouTube now really isn't going to change with any of those options, and that has to do with the fact of how our system integrates with YouTube itself. And so I don't really think that there's a way that you can make YouTube itself have better video quality. You can have more robust video drivers within your system, but that's not going to be a guarantee that when it gets to YouTube and it meets with YouTube, that that's going to be any different.
What about audio? Like, how does that included in here? Because like these microphones, sometimes when you're watching past meetings, it's just hard to hear people.
Right. So with option number 1, I would like to see us be able to replace the microphones that we have now, and I'd also really like to be able to replace that TV screen that's got the big red line through it most of the time. That's really distracting and annoying, but we could do that within the confines of option number 1.
Okay, so microphones are on the table for every option.
Yes.
Okay, or audio.
From, if we were to decide on option number 1, could we scale that at a later date to include other pieces like the tablets and other things? Is that something, is it scalable, I guess is what I'm asking?
No. Option number 1 wouldn't be scalable because it is not actually operating with the console and the server stack. It is completely disconnected from that and is just operating off of a laptop.
I don't think that option number 1 should be our option. I don't like the thought of an unmanned system, and I also don't like the thought of a laptop being what we're running that on. Rather have a stronger PC or something that's making that happen. And I think my biggest concern is audio input, because we've had like Councilwoman DeHaven, tried to call in, couldn't even hear us. So my biggest concern is like the equipment that we have up here and the mics, and just making sure that everything integrates well, so that what's heard there and what's also heard by our guests that are calling in, is quality enough that we can actually have a functional conversation.
Yeah, and I know sometimes even just trying to go back and watch the videos and listen, I actually have additional speakers hooked up to my desktop so that I can turn up the volume so that I can hear what is going on. If that is one of your main concerns, I would think that option number 2 would probably be the best route to go if that's a concern. Option number 1 wouldn't necessarily, even with the new microphones, have a better sound quality.
Yeah, and I also agree with Rachel. I don't think we need the kind of technology that pans in all the time. I think we just need to be able to switch back and forth, have stationary scenes, switch back and forth wherever we need to, and make it so that the public, when they're watching the YouTube stream, can also see what's being presented, slideshow or otherwise.
Yeah.
Is option 2 scalable?
So we could scale option number 2. It'd be much more difficult to do that than to go with option number 3, but it would be possible. We would need to piece together pieces of the system so that they would integrate with each other, which is kind of where we're at now as far as the server stack and the console system that we have back there now. The stack back there now actually has 3 different servers, one for the cameras, one for the TV screens, and one for the audio, and none of those systems are compatible with each other. And so part of the issue that we run into when we're trying to do all 3 at one time is that they're fighting with each other, which is why sometimes when, like, Nancy tries to plug in her laptop to get it to share screen, it takes it a minute because the whole system is basically just colliding with each other and fighting with each other just, to even run. So I hesitate to try to replace a system with just a newer system where we're going to run into those same types of issues.
I think for me, the one thing that is definitely extra and not needed would be voting via a tablet. I just think that that's kind of over the top, number one, but number two, I think that there's also power in conviction and making a vote, yay or nay, yes or no, whatever you want to do,
Yeah.
behind it. And I sort of feel as if like voting via a tablet would maybe take that away. It might be easier to track for somebody online, but
Yeah.
if they're watching on YouTube or they're watching a live stream, I don't know that that's needed.
You'd also have the option to still do the vocal vote with Linda recording it. The tablet really would just be like a backup option that would be able for you to help track where you're at on the agenda, and also for people to be able to see who voted what. I agree, it's not necessarily, it's more of a want than a need, but it might be helpful for people if they're going back to look at a previous meeting and they're wondering, well, who voted what on this? And it'd just be easier to follow. But I feel like it's definitely a want, not a need. And sometimes it can be distracting too when you're in a meeting, or if you're trying to follow along with an agenda, to also keep up with the discussion that's going on in the room. I know in a lot of the board meetings that I go to, we use our laptops to pull up the agenda just because it's so large, but it can become distracting at times. Yeah, I totally agree.
And I think about, I could see Congress, for example, right? Like
Correct.
Just the city of Cortez and municipality like this size, it just seems like a lot.
Yeah.
Well, and Matt brings up a good point. The interactive voting and the integration with Agenda Quick, that would be more for like the clerk's benefit. And I guess like if Linda's advocating for those things, then we'll consider them. But if you don't find them necessary, then we can take those off the table, or weigh that. I see you shaking your head no.
Do you want my opinion, or do you want me to just?
Yes.
state?
Yeah, please.
I personally do not feel that they're necessary for me. But that's your decision as a council, but they're not necessary for me.
Thank you, Linda.
Is it possible to go with option 3 because it like, just for example, like it is scalable, so if down the road people wanted to change, the systems could be integrated, but take out the tablets for now? And would that reduce the cost?
It would reduce the cost.
And is there a difference between, I see option 3 says uses 3 cameras for panoramic view, and option 2 says 3 cameras for full room view. Is there a difference between full room and panoramic?
So the full room view, we'd have 3 cameras that were stationary, and then the panoramic view would be the cameras that actually move and follow wherever you're at in the speaker. One of the issues that we have is this room is so large that it really is hard to capture everybody from that end of the room back over here to the podium and everyone along the dais. It's hard to capture that with just, without a camera that moves to where the speakers are at in the process. So it could be accomplished with 2 cameras that are stationary. It could be accomplished with 3 cameras that are stationary. But the 2 cameras that are stationary really would capture the dais, the person that is presenting, and it wouldn't necessarily capture all the way over to like where Drew, Pat, and Linda are at.
So it sounds like with option 2, it may also not capture everyone in the room, but option 3 and 4 would. So
Right.
it sounds to me like there is an argument worthy of having the panoramic camera. I like option 3, but I just agree I don't think we need the tablets.
Who would move those cameras and what kind of training, like who's gonna then be responsible for switching the views between the cameras and, plugging into the presentation and kind of managing that during our meeting? Like, I know Vicky's back there. Would it be her, and or are things automatic?
Well, they wouldn't be automatic, and I think no matter which option you follow, we're going to need to have IT support at every council meeting, no matter what. So in my mind, it would be the IT staff that was managing that system throughout the meeting, but they basically need to be here for every meeting anyway, so.
I guess I just hate to pay a lot for a system that's hard for them to use as well.
Yeah, I think that ties into what I'm thinking, is that I'd like to have the simplest system that meets our needs, that our IT department is able to operate and maintain, and avoid higher long-term costs. To me, I think if option 2 does that, I think that is where I would be more comfortable.
Okay, so option 2 with the tablets or without the tablets?
No, option 2 didn't have, no tablets, option 2.
Okay, sorry.
I would say, could we
Although
look at option 2 and then option 3 without the tablets, like more specific prices?
Okay,
Agreed.
we can do that. Okay,
We're having a $40,000 differential in each one of these plans. How do we budget? Do we go for the highest? And there's a lot of difference. Are we going to be able to narrow it down?
there is a lot of difference in pricing, and I think that's true of any IT system that you have. Currently in our budget now, we do have the $86,734 that was already approved in our 2023 budget, but the 2024 budget will be coming soon also, so.
So, to pin you down a little bit better, how do we know how much to budget? If we have a $40,000 difference, the more you pay, the more you're going to get. Is that what you're getting out of this package? Or are we just getting an estimate about what it's going to cost?
So we just rely on estimates for the budget process. There's a lot of things that can change in between the finalization of the budget. Certainly supply chain issues, whether or not that vendor is willing to hold the system price for us for 90 days, 6 months, there's a lot of variables that can happen from what was budgeted that
So-
could be unexpected.
So if we decide that we want option number 2 at $80,000, it could actually come out at $120,000 to get option 2.
Well, that is a possibility. I don't think that that's likely, but it is possible. And I would rather council have the worst case scenario of if everything went way wrong and supply chain shut down tomorrow and it was going to take us another 8 months to get the equipment and the supplier wasn't willing to hold the price that was quoted when we ordered. I think that's where that 120 comes into that range.
Mayor and council, if I can maybe just answer that as well. Councilmember Spruill, the reality is we would budget for 120. That's worst case scenario and hope to come in below. That's the safe bet.
If we were to, get the 2 options and make a decision and then order this stuff, are we going to end up paying for it this year or next year? Because if it's, everything else seems to be taking, still taking a long time because of supply chain issues. So that would get, if it's if we don't have to pay for it till next year, that would give us a chance to budget more properly.
It would. Most of the vendors, though, want at least some form of payment at the time that you order, no matter how long it's going to take for them to get it to you. So whether that's 25% or 50%. So if we go into the next council meeting, which will be taking us into August to make a decision, and we order it, say, like in September, we will have to pay a portion of that cost when we order it, but more than likely, the equipment itself would not actually be here until 2024.
Okay.
And you may not be able to answer this, but what is the life expectancy of this program, or any of these programs?
You know, 5 to 7 years is the life expectancy of any server out there. There's plenty of times that equipment lasts longer than that, but at the end of 7 years, not only are you nearing the end of its useful life, but you're also coming close to the point where the system is no longer going to update, and they're no longer going to be providing support for that equipment.
Can I make a comment on a matter of process?
Sure.
So I won't be on this council like the next time this issue comes around.
Right.
But when it does, because for sure it's going to eventually, I think what would be a more effective process in helping this move along is obviously communicating the issue to us and what we're facing when it comes to the technology, but also giving us a chance to have a conversation around the requirements that we would like to see instead of just being presented with options. Because I think, well, for me personally, I feel like I didn't have that opportunity to talk about requirements for technology that we use pretty frequently and that other boards use pretty frequently. I just think that it would be nice to have been able to provide more thoughts around our needs and like what we perceive as community needs in the technology that we have here. So just as a matter of process, I'd like there to be a little bit more conversation around requirements before going out to bid, and then and so that way we don't have as much back and forth or confusion. I just feel like maybe that was a piece that was maybe lacking in this conversation.
I think that staff felt like went back like last year in September when we went through the budget process that we had that conversation, but maybe not fully to your expectations. So I, take that to heart, and as we go into the next budget process, we want to make sure that we leave plenty of room for council input on any of the items that are going to directly affect your day-to-day.
Thank you.
Certainly, thank you for the comment.
Madam Mayor, if I could interrupt, it's kind of a comment and question for Kelly. I've sat in a lot of different hearing rooms with different levels of technology, and one of the most effective ones that I've participated in recently was the City of Grand Junction. And their hearing room, whereas ours is kind of a rectangle going north and south, theirs is set up east and west, so the dais is more narrow and the audience seating is deeper. And what they use is they have, rather than laptops, they have 27-inch monitors at each station where the council sits, and the Planning Commission also uses the same monitors, and the staff that sits to the side has the same monitors, and then they have I'm guessing it's maybe a 100-inch or more monitor behind the council, rather than multiple 70-inchers or whatever these are, for the audience to view. But the the monitors in front of everybody all showed the same thing, and I found that very helpful when they were doing land use hearings, especially where they had detailed plats, or they had text, PowerPoint text that had a lot of information on one page, where here we kind of can sort of see it, but if you're an old guy like me, you're squinting and trying to see it on the monitor, whereas on the big monitor, the crowd could see it, and all of you could see the same thing, and there wasn't a delay or a problem with watching the cursor point out different lots on a plat and that sort of thing. It all was instantaneous. Now, I don't know what type of system they have. It's way above my pay grade, but and it may be an expense that is just not practical for us. But I'll tell you, it sure worked nice to have the big 27-inch monitors at every dais position and at the tables, and then a big monitor for the public to look at. So I don't know if it's worth, if you know, maybe not this go around, but it might be worth checking with the City of Grand Junction to see. And then they may complain, say, oh, we hate it now, but it sure seemed like, I worked for the county, and when we went to city council meetings, they had a lot of joint meetings, and we were just amazed at the quality of the audio and the video and the detail that we could see both from in the audience or at the desk where the staff was sitting. I never sat up on the dais, but I think they saw the same thing I saw. But it definitely was worth looking at. And again, I don't know if it might be more than option 4 to do something similar, but just from experience, it seemed, and the monitors weren't for the interactive voting. They still did voice votes. It was more so that you could see the primarily plat maps and detailed stuff like that. It just made it much easier to understand the details of a land use application.
Thanks for sharing, Pat. As I remember, if I remember correctly, that's how the counties has their setup. They each have monitors up there, and which match what's displayed on the TVs and the big projection behind them. I don't think we have a place for a big projection like that, and honestly, the counties is really hard to see because it's behind them. So there's still some improvements that they could use as well. But they have a system kind of like what Pat is describing. So I mean, it might be worth asking them how they have their set up and what it costs, and you know, the pros and cons of that as well. Just looking at our partners.
Yeah, so we did speak to Montezuma County and asked them about how their system was set up, and that's how we came up with option number 1, which was to completely pivot away from the server stack and the console that we have.
Okay.
So option number 1 is based off of a similar setup that the county has. Keep in mind the county also has a much smaller space that they are trying to cover. I would imagine that it is maybe a third of the size of this room, which makes it dramatically more manageable than what we have in this room if we're trying to cover all of the areas where people are speaking. But that's how we arrived at option 1, is we called the county and said, hey, how do you guys do this? And went from there.
So do you feel like you have enough from us then on how to move forward with this?
So just let me make sure that I am clear on what you'd like for me to bring back at the next meeting. You'd like option number 2 along with option number 3 that does not include the council tablets. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think we'd like to further investigate those 2 options.
Okay. Is there any other additional information that you feel like you would like to see, or any other options within those 2 confines that you'd like for us to ask about?
I guess not from you, but really from the public who watches our videos. You know, what do you want to see improved? Like, what would help you ingest and understand our meetings better and understand, you know, who's talking and what's going on, and just have that historical record. So, okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly. Okay, that concludes 4 on our agenda presentations. We're going to move on to 5, public hearings. 5A is a resolution number 17, Series 2023, presented by our contract city planner, Nancy Dalsdahl.
All right, we're ready now. This is basically a housekeeping item. As you recall, the quick and clean car wash, we did a right-of-way vacation, minor subdivision, plat amendment, site plan. What we missed was a conditional use permit. So we're catching up, adding in the conditional use permit. Essentially, the entire application, is the same as the site plan. No changes other than that we need to require this separate use permit. So we took this back to the Planning Commission, and they voted and recommended by a vote of 3-0 to recommend approval of the conditional use permit. And staff's recommending approval of the conditional use permit. We have for you a suggested resolution with, sure I've got this one right. No, I picked up the wrong resolution, with 5 conditions regarding meeting all normal conditions of approval, that their construction drawings be approved and signed by a licensed engineer, requirements that the landscaping improvements must be installed prior to a certificate of occupancy or financially guaranteed, that the right-of-way vacation plat amendments be approved and recorded prior to issuance of any building permits for the property, and I think that's a repeat of condition number 5. So are there any questions?
Was there any discussion about that being a wetland area to the south of where that car wash is going to be, or?
There was discussion to the east, but not the south. It's a floodplain, not a wetland. As far as we know, a drainage area. That, if you'll recall, we did require them to sort of flip the site plan at the site plan stage, where, I think it's coming up here, they initially proposed access in that drainage area to the east, since that was what CDOT actually, let's see if there we go. Since CDOT's access plan actually had the access over on the eastern side, a full movement access closer to Walgreens, they ended up, at the advice of the city engineer, based on concerns with that wetland and floodplain, they flipped the access, and it's now on the western side of the property, where they will build out to some degree the city standard road in there, and there is potential, not a requirement, potential for the commercial properties to the west to be able to use that in the future. Should CDOT further limit their access points, they then perhaps have access to this newly constructed road that'll be a full movement access onto the highway.
Was there any discussion about just how much earth is going to have to be moved for this to happen? It's kind of on a slant.
They do feel like they've balanced it, but absolutely the flipping of again, the flipping of the site plan helped to minimize that amount of fill.
So the properties to the west would have would legally be able to use that access because it looks like it's a right-of-way.
Yes.
Okay. Are they going to have to improve that access as part of this?
Improve it. We required them to approve it down to their point of access, but not to the end of their property.
Okay, that makes sense. And CDOT's already approved access then, since,
I don't know, honestly, if they've issued the permit. We will make sure that that access permit gets issued prior to any building permits being issued. But we did get written comments. It was unusual, but we got written comments and even some phone conversations with CDOT about allowing the access point on the western side. And part of that is because our access control plan actually shows that the full movement access or three-quarter movement access on the eastern side of the property. Here, I got a big, oh, you can't see it, can you? There we go. So CDOT's access control plan does show the full movement access here, which is down in the hole in the drainage, which would have required a full piping of that drainage, a lot of fill, a lot of issues. We would also have required our full right-of-way access to be constructed in there, causing a lot of perhaps environmental harm and actual cost. But actually, Kevin Kistler negotiated with CDOT and got them to move the point of access in the access control plan, just because it makes a lot more sense in this location. I think further benefit is that we've got other commercial properties on this side. That's the Papa Murphy's strip mall area that could potentially use this. Over to this side is a vacant parcel, and then Walgreens that probably don't have the potential to share in that access. So I think we all figured it does a much better job for the whole city.
so does one of these conditions then address the CDOT access permit
Yes,
prior to? Yeah.
the first one requires that.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure that it does. Okay.
And I just want to clarify, because I've heard both wetland and drainage be used for that eastern property. It's a drainage, correct?
That's our understanding,
Okay.
yes. If I put it back.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion that council approve resolution number 17, Series 2023, a resolution approving a conditional use permit for a new car wash on property located at 1511 East Main Street in the Commercial Highway C zone, as submitted by Quick and Clean CO 003 LLC, with the conditions stated in the resolution.
Second.
Madam Mayor, before you take a second, were you wanting to?
Oh, open for public comment, yeah,
public
sorry.
comment?
Do we have the applicants here with us tonight who would like to speak? Okay. All right, then I'll open this public hearing to public comment. Do we have anyone who would like to speak about this application, this conditional use permit? All right, seeing no speakers, I'll close the public hearing portion, and then we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second, or does she need to Okay.
Second.
All right, motion made by Yazzie and seconded by Dobry.
Dobry,
Aye.
Kiefhoffer,
Aye.
Spruill,
Yes.
Rainey,
Aye.
DeHaven,
Aye.
Yazzie,
Aye.
Medina.
Aye. Okay. We're going to move on to 5B on our agenda. 5B is ordinance number 1317, Series 2023, presented by our Contract City Planner Nancy Dawsall.
All right. So the request in front of you right now, although there are two requests, we are only talking about a request to rezone the property with the large star on it, right here, from C commercial to I industrial. The applicants have also submitted a conditional use permit, and of course, it's always hard to separate the uses that they want from the rezoning request. But tonight, we're only talking about for this item, we're only talking about the rezoning request. And I know there's been they did submit two separate rezoning requests. We've separated those items, and before you tonight is only this one request, the property with the star on it. I'm going to go into a little more detail. I don't see people that were here that were concerned about the other property. That one's been pretty contentious, but I want you to understand that we're not talking about that one tonight, okay? So the vicinity map, the area, just to orient everybody, the gray, this is Highway 491, right here. Lebanon Road takes off here, and of course that's the access to our industrial park. The gray colors in here are our industrial zoning already. The red colors are commercial zoning. The smaller star on here is independent log company right now where they operate. And I've got a couple photos and some zooming in to show you the property. So the property in question is outlined here in the aqua color. It's 7.86 acres, currently zoned commercial. There is a metal building currently on it. There's one odd little sort of surrounded by parcel. It's also owned by the applicant, but they have not requested that that be rezoned. That would stay as a commercial property. They actually also own the property off here. And let me show you. Also, so surrounding the area, we've got the parcel here in question. They own this parcel also here. It has a metal building on it. This small one here. This property is Sanchez Excavation. And
Mayor, if I can break in for just a moment, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Nancy. You're speaking of areas on here that, I don't know if your cursor's not working, but there we go. We're not seeing, thank you. It disappears. Yeah, it's disappearing for some reason. We're not seeing what you're talking about.
all right. Well, there it goes. Let's try this again. Parcel requested for rezoning, I'll just watch up here, is here. This parcel here is owned by the applicant but not requested for rezoning. There's a metal building on it. There's a metal building right here on the property in question. This parcel here is also owned by the applicant. We've got a parcel here zoned commercially. I want to talk about that parcel a little bit. It's Sanchez Excavation right now, and the, forget the name of it, but the marijuana
Herbal
retail.
alternative.
Yeah, herbal alternative, right here. The excavation business is not an allowed use in the commercial zone. So it's not a bad use, it's grandfathered use, it's there. but it is considered, in our code, it would be required if they wanted to locate it today or permit it today, it would require industrial zoning. Just talking about the area. The cursor's just, there it goes, okay? And then we've got, this is actually a city-owned parcel. It's got the shooting range, indoor shooting range on it. Bulk storage, oil, right here. This is Independent Log operating their business right here. It's zone commercial. Again, they bought a property that was already operating a similar business to theirs. It's a grandfathered use in the commercial zone. Let's go on from there. I've showed you their site plan. It's not applicable to the rezoning per se, but they are proposing to do log home construction, and they can talk a little bit more about the details of their business when they get up here. This is their existing operation. It's the one with the smaller star that we talked about. It's the zoned commercially, but they're legally operating under a grandfathered land use off Lebanon Road. There's another view of their current operation with trucks, et cetera, and equipment. So you get a good idea of the type of use that's proposed. Okay, this photo was taken from the Herbal Alternatives property. If there were, there we go. So the property itself is approximately, oops, I keep hitting the wrong, in here. Remember the little in-holding? That's this building here. So this building's on the property. The rest of the property is approximately like this. What you're seeing here in the foreground is the Sanchez excavation operation. And we took this from up on the hill adjacent to Herbal Alternatives. So it gives you a good feel. 491, I think you can see over here, right there. All right, so we all have a good feel for the neighborhood now. I wanted to go over the criteria for consideration for a rezone. I put them all up there. Get to the discussion of the criteria. So the first criteria for a rezone is almost as a question of, was the existing zone for the property adopted in error? It's always a difficult question. We have really no way of knowing whether a property was adopted in error. I would tend to say no in this case, since most of the city adjacent to the highways has been sort of default designated as commercial. There is, someone could argue that buildings that look like that probably are considered our retail commercial, looks slightly more like industrial. It's your first criteria, though. The second criteria is, has there been a change of character in the area? New public facilities, other zone changes, growth trends, development transitions, etc. I think our discussion in this case was saying, hard to say, not really. Let's go this way. So when you look at the area, the newest project in the area was Target Rental, located at the entrance to the industrial park right here. There really hasn't been, as far as I was made aware, any other new developments in the area or any other rezones in the area. You couldn't? I can. Let me see if I can get that back. Target rental, right there, right? Let's go back.
And Target rental is technically in
The
the industrial park, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So the next criteria would be, is there a need for the proposed rezoning within the area or community? That one gets to be a bit tougher. What we have in Cortez right now for industrial zoning, you are looking at. That's basically all the industrial zoning that we have in the community. It's not fully built out. However, two of the larger vacant parcels are owned by the city. I have heard from several developers that there is a need for job-creating manufacturing in the city, and that the choices for vacant land or for available land are severely limited. So our comprehensive plan written in 2008 makes the comment that this is our only area available for industrial development. We do hope to expand jobs in the community, and this is what we're limited to. So whether or not you feel that this is adequate or not, it does seem like you could probably make the finding that there is a need for additional industrial land in the city of Cortez.
So in our land use code, manufacturing wood products is a conditional use in commercial areas. So why, for this project, why does it need to be upzoned to industrial?
Well, and I did skip over that. There's part of their use involves the storage of commodities, okay, which is the firewood, basically. They go out in the forest, they thin for wildfire, they do wildfire mitigation, bring the logs back, and then use those in every way, shape, form they can think of. They construct log homes, they construct, well, we can let them talk, but part of that is they create from the leftover pieces firewood piles that they'll store on the site and then sell off-site. Really careful reading of the code, we got to the provision, and I can quote it for you there, that the storage of commodities is only allowed in an industrial zone. So yes, they could do part, potentially, if they can get a conditional use permit approved, part of their uses in the commercial zone with a conditional use permit. To fully do all of their uses, they need to rezone to industrial to allow the storage of commodities.
Can you point that out in the code?
Yeah, it's in the performance criteria. See how fast I can get there. Anyone beat me to it?
507.
Yeah, 5.07J.
Which is regarding open storage. No open storage of materials or commodities shall be permitted in any district except as an accessory use to a main use located in a building in an I or PUD industrial district.
So I feel like your interpretation is then that they need a or a conditional use permit for any other zoning but I or PUD. But I don't think the code anywhere says that. So I think they can store stuff if we rezone it to industrial, or if it doesn't get rezoned, they can't store material like that.
The interpretation staff has made is that if they were successful in applying for a conditional use permit, They could do manufacturing of wood products and an equipment storage yard with approval of a conditional use permit in the commercial zone. However, the storage of commodities would require them to rezone to industrial. At that point, manufacturing of wood products and equipment storage yard do become a permitted land use, but the open storage of commodities, we've made the interpretation, would still require the conditional use permit.
Okay. And it would have to be a secondary
Use, yes.
use.
Which, in this case, it will be. We're sort of getting ahead of ourselves, though, I guess, unless the question is, do they really need to rezone?
Yeah, exactly. That was my question. Do they need to rezone to do what they want to do?
And staff's interpretation has been yes. To do fully what they need to do, they need to rezone.
What is the definition of open storage, I guess, is what I want to dig into.
You want to do this right here, and I want Pat to help me. Open storage to me, and I don't believe it's defined in our code,
It's not.
would be storage out in the open, not inside a building.
So if would a fenced yard be open storage, I guess, is what I'm wondering,
I would say yes.
even though it's enclosed? Okay.
Open to the sky.
I would concur with Nancy's opinion on how we interpret the open storage requirement.
Okay, so if we were to rezone, and so the business is operating, there's one building that's on commercial, there's one building that's on industrial. Are we are we going to be able to limit them to using the one building versus the other? Because that can create a gray area. I mean, when you're out there, it looks like just one big property. I mean, can part of the condition be that they have to dissolve the boundary and what is it, a boundary line adjustment, or make it clear that only one building is part of this business or this commercial, operation?
Yeah, I don't think we would want to dissolve the property line if you do rezone. If you don't rezone, it might make more sense to combine them and operate as one. But you don't want part of a parcel zoned industrial and part of a parcel zoned commercial. Did I get that right? Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, I guess it's confusing when they own properties next to it that can be incorporated in their business operations, but we need to make it clear that this either conditional use permit or the rezoning is for this particular property.
Right, and the rezoning will be clear, which would be rezoned, but you're right, it would be hard not to blur operations, and they need to be cautious of that.
Madam Mayor, before we pursue this any further, before the council votes on this application, I want to disclose that I attended the Planning and Zoning meeting, which is this agenda was considered by the Planning and Zoning Commission. The entire P&Z meeting was audio and video recorded, and the results of the P&Z vote is included in the council's agenda packet this evening. Merely a disclosure.
Okay, thank you, David. While we're on that topic, does any other council member have anything to disclose?
I just want to disclose that I watched the P&Z meeting.
Okay. And then every email that I've gotten in comment regard to either this property or the other property, I've just forwarded to staff. So, to be part of the record. I have a few questions. So access, are there, where is CDOT with the access? Are there permits? Access permits? Is there one access or two? Are they legal?
We have not
Like, do
heard
they-
back from CDOT
Okay,
about that.
but that would be part of the condition, a condition of,
Not necessarily a condition of rezoning, but a condition of a conditional use permit and establishing the use, absolutely.
okay. So yeah, in terms of rezoning, we're deciding whether this parcel would be more beneficial to be rezoned as industrial in perpetuity.
Yes.
And is that border, the dark black line that indicates, I assume, the city and county border, what is just north of that line? Is that industrial or the equivalent of whatever that would be considered in the county?
Let's see if we can get my, so
Right
here.
there, yep. I'm just curious.
It looks industrial. I looked at the zoning and it was their sort of ag zoning. They didn't have industrial zoning on it. It must again be another grandfathered use.
I know that the county has a commercial and industrial overlay that they worked on developing, I don't know when that was, but they have a GIS layer that shows areas where they want to focus industrial and commercial zoning, and so it's an overlay. And this property is not included in that boundary.
I could not find that boundary, so I
Okay, it's on
can't give
the
you
county
an
GIS webpage, and I looked at that map and I requested, I was hoping that we could all get a map that highlighted that, but it didn't come out well, so,
because we couldn't find it, sorry.
okay.
So Rachel, are you saying that that property in the county to the north is in their plan to be zoned?
That one is, yes.
Okay.
So the property to the north is in that commercial industrial overlay. I think what it did was included, sections along the highway, and then it came in and incorporated parcels that are already zoned industrial, but it left out a lot of the commercial ones that are in that area.
Madam Mayor, unless there's more discussion, I'm happy to make a motion.
I believe the
Oh, we have to open it.
applicant and the public.
Okay, yeah,
comment.
so, does council have any more questions before we invite the applicant up?
Nancy, did you finish your presentation? I feel like we kind of,
Not really, but.
I'd like to hear the rest of the presentation.
So we were going through the criteria for consideration. I think we ended up on are the proposed uses. Is there a need for the proposed rezoning in the area or the community? And I think we probably discussed that. I did show this map. This is the entire city. So it does show you where we have industrial zone property. For the entire city, we've got right here. So this little sort of mountain-shaped parcel is the one under question. This is our industrial zoning. So up to you whether we have enough or not, obviously. If we go back through the criteria, there are the proposed uses compatible with the surrounding area or uses, or can any adverse impacts be mitigated? That's always tough to decide at this stage, so your level of decision at this point is thinking about the proposed use, thinking about the surrounding neighborhood, and whether or not it might be possible through, in this case, a conditional use permit, to be able to mitigate any adverse impacts that might come through. The next criteria on there, would there be benefits derived by the community or area by granting the proposed zoning? And I did include some discussion about the proposed use, the need for fire mitigation in our area and this type of business, and the benefits that might be derived from that by allowing that type of business a place to operate we also speak quite a bit in our comprehensive plans about economic development, creation of jobs, and allowing local businesses to grow in the area. The final criterias are there adequate facilities to serve the development? Assuming this is a fairly easy to access property directly off of 491 without impacting other parcels, assuming they can get permits from CDOT, it does appear that adequate facilities are available for the parcel. We have two more criteria, which is the proposal in conformance with the policies, intents, and requirements of the comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan does include numerous goals that support well-balanced and diverse local economy, encouraging industries that employ city residents for the reclamation of resource extraction. That one was super specific to this type of business. Encourage manufacturing businesses and other skilled labor businesses to enhance employment opportunities at living wage income levels. And then the final criteria is, does the proposed change constitute spot zoning? In this case, it is directly adjacent to zoned industrial properties. It is adjacent on the other side or two other sides to properties that appear industrial in nature but are grandfathered and in commercial zoning in the city. It does not appear, it does appear that in its overall in conformance with the comprehensive plan, so it does appear that this request would not constitute spot zoning. Okay, and then I wanted to go over, the Planning Commission did recommend approval of this request by a vote of 3-0. We had 2 planning commissioners not present at the meeting. So they did find that the property is adjacent to existing industrial uses and that they felt that impacts could be mitigated with appropriate use conditions. They did find that the community would benefit from the use of the property by the additional economic benefits of jobs, opportunities, and taxes generated, and the expansion of a much-needed natural resource use. They found that there were adequate facilities available to serve the development, and they did find that the proposal is in general conformance with the policies, intents, and requirements of the Cortez Comprehensive Plan. Okay. Unless you have questions.
I think I'd just like to hear from the applicant on how they intend to mitigate any impacts. Did read the narrative, but it felt like it was a little bit vague, so I just was hoping for some more clarification.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. What we're proposing, like, what Nancy was saying, what I also do is wildland firefighting. And so it all goes hand in hand, if you're doing the firefighting, if you're doing the fire mitigation, and so therefore you end up with a product. Well, we employ roughly 30 to 50 people. So you've got to bring them in, and you got to have something to do when there ain't a fire. So we do the log cabin kits. So something that hasn't been talked about in the previous meetings that, there's so much that, not to bring up. The reservation had shut that coal mine down. So I have contracts to haul firewood out there. And so this helps a lot of people. It ain't just the little hub of Cortez, but, we'll be, getting rid of the byproduct through that way, and then taking firewood to the reservation. as far as the rezoning, I started this, we really looked around Cortez as far as just a piece of property that would be adequate for our use. There was nothing. I mean, unless it's way out by Dove Creek or wherever out there. So we started honing in closer to the city limits. And we actually, seen the drive-in property. What's everybody from Cortez is familiar with the drive-in property. So we began to pursue that to buy it. It took 8 months to get that bought. In the meantime, I was always friends with the Lively Logging. That's what it was called, Dwayne Lively. And his dad started that shop on Lebanon Road. They actually had a little sawmill set up there in the back. Anybody way back in the 70s and 80s remember how much equipment Gary and Dwayne and the dad, I don't remember his name, they had skidders, they had log trucks, they had loads of logs there. And so anyways, that came available. So right there, them two properties came hand in hand. And then right at that time, my wife seen on the internet that they had put that property up there on the hill. That we bought all them properties. There was a little house down there. Now, that property up on the hill on 491, what we're talking about, that used to be oil field. That was an oil field business up there. They did oil field bits and all that. So it was already industrial. What's oil field? That's what them shops were being used for. They were built in 1950. The guy's name was Dwayne, or anyways, he was in the oil field. And so he put them shops up there. He owned down by Sanchez's. That was more refineries there. Maybe some of you old timers remember it. There was some more oil barrel, or big facilities there, that like what Fraley's had there, set up there by Sanchez's. So that whole area has been, in the industrial area for a long time. Now, as I begin to go through this process, we're working with Nancy and everything, and, we've been after this 1.5 years, or no, 2 years, trying to find a glove that will fit. So finally, at first, I was like, why do I need to rezone it? But later, it's like, hey, that makes sense. But and for later purposes, so you not only store the firewood, you put the logs outside. You can't put them in that building. That ain't even going to fit. But I'm not proposing to put nothing in the buildings. And so anyways, Nancy, come to find out, she's done a real good job. I didn't realize how frustrating and how many rules and all this stuff. So we've learned a lot ourselves too. She needs a raise. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that goes into this, and especially if you're not familiar with it. But back to the subject, we looked out in the county, and whatnot. You can't go put this type of business right by, just next door to a house. Well, Montezuma County is so developed anymore that, you can't go out there to the county unless you go out in the bean fields, There's homes along every road, every nook and cranny anymore. It's, And so when we finally honed in on all these properties and bought it, then there was a little house down there that was also built in the 50s. We stopped down there and I knocked on the door and I said, hey, you guys interested in selling it? They did. So we've put 4 properties together, or five properties together. So that you guys talked about that other little shop that wasn't included in this. Well, because I was just buying it at that time, but later I'm going to put it industrial too. It's not that I was wanting to hold that apart. That was owned by a whole different guy. See? So 5 different properties we honed together here, and we feel that it's in the perfect location, every property.
Thank you.
Would you mind speaking to just how you hope to mitigate any sort of effects of the businesses, like noise and like materials, I guess, like how are you planning to mitigate any like hazardous or nuisance or anything like that?
Well, so the city engineer, and we looked it up, the band mill, and maybe Nancy can plug that back in, and you can zoom in on that picture out there on that slab. It's just a little wood miser band mill. You can tow it behind your pickup. It measured 89 decimals. That's it. We started it one day and went down to the Maverick. You can't hear it. You cannot hear it. It's you know, up there and stuff. It don't matter if it was down there at Lebanon. It wouldn't matter if it's over there at the drive-in property. That 89 decimals is very minimum. You get 30, 40, 50 feet away. Like I said, we went down to the Maverick. You cannot hear it. There's no other homes around there. That's why we bought that little house out. That would have been a house right there next to this property that I could already see that it might impact them. Yeah, go to that if you can.
In regards to mitigation, what is your plan for like wood product waste? You know, recognizing the issue with ironwood out in the county and knowing that it's hot and we're all waiting for that to create it's a huge hazard that's just kind of waiting to happen, and I would hate to allow another hazard like that to happen in the city without a plan of how you're going to deal with that waste and mitigate all issues against wildfire.
Okay, so like what they was doing is what was called a plywood plant. So it's high production, doing a lot of peeling as far as getting that log to a dowel. So, you know, in the volume that they were doing, you know, that was, and I've seen that pile, you know. No, it's a band mill and everything goes into a tube and it blows into a trailer, into a little dump trailer. Then when it takes about 6 months to fill that trailer. Put it on Craigslist and go deliver it to them, or the dump takes it for free. Okay. You can take anything up to the dump because the dump does mulching compost. So even ironwood stuff, they haul it daily out to the dump and drop it off. Okay. And so that's a whole nother ball game, you know. That's not even nothing. You know, a band mill, I mean, you can look it on, you can Google it online and you know, you can saw for a week and you know, wouldn't even have a wheelbarrow of sawdust. And again, that's a big industrial type machine that they're spinning that log, and all that bark and that log not being uniform is trued up into a dowel, and then it begins to make the plywood. Well, all that waste is what they got out there.
Thank you for that clarification. Just wanted to make sure there wasn't going to be a fire hazard.
No, and I've done this business. You know, I'm from Cortez, but 18 years ago, I was born and raised in Cortez, but 18 years ago, there was no logging around here and not much fire, so we went to Alamosa. All that timber started to die. So we was set up over there in the county, and we never had one violation. And I mean, like I said, it you know, usually it's, you know, because we go do fire and stuff like that and other projects, it's not just, this is kind of just a fill-in project. I mean, right now I got a crew that I sent to the Grapevine fire, you know, and we'll all be soon going down there, you know, as much as Arizona's already on fire. So then when we come off of fires, like I said, to employ everybody, we do fire mitigation and then the cabin kits. Though when you're doing the cabin kits, that's just, you know, you're notching a log to make it fit, you know. So the little bit of handful of no, not sawdust, but the log notching, you know, at the end of the day, it's a wheelbarrow, you know. Okay. But what I plan to do if I get stuff like that people don't want, you know, I already talked with the dump. They said bring it down, they'll take it for free because I put it in their mulch.
Great.
Just so I'm clear, it sounds like, do all of your employees kind of get called out on fires, and then when they're not on fires, they come back and work on the kits? So it's kind of inconsistent when the actual log processing and kit building is? It's kind of dependent on the fire season? Or are there employees that are like, I'm a log kit
Yeah,
employee?
no, I have strictly people that just do the fire mitigation and the logs. And then I have, you know, you gotta be red carded, certified, and I have roughly 30-some people that are red carded wildland firefighters.
Okay, so the construction of the log cabin kits is happening like consistently throughout the year?
It can be, it could be. I mean, I'm not, you know, in heat like this right now, obviously I wouldn't put people out there to, I'd put them in a machine up on the mountain to, you know, either mitigating timber or, you know, on private land, we masticate it, make it look nice. You'd work smart, you know, you wouldn't put a guy up there on the hill to bake.
And what business hours do you plan to operate on the property?
Just the log home stuff, it's just normal business hours, but I had told Nancy before, sometimes we get dispatched, not usually after 9 o'clock, but, you know, we've been dispatched at 9 to 10 o'clock.
So that would just be vehicles leaving and entering
Yeah.
the property?
It'd be like equipment, you know, so in a part of our application, we're asking to store firefighting equipment up there. So yes, if we say we get dispatched, you know, 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, you would go up there, start loading that equipment, and you would leave.
Okay.
Well, could I jump in and just to cover some of the concerns that I'm hearing from citizens? Their concern is about the possibility of an unsightly area. For instance, large trucks turning in and parking and heavy machinery, potential noise from machinery, outside storage, don't know what that's going to be exactly, and traffic hazard with big trucks and turning in and coming out. So basically that's what I'm hearing in a nutshell.
And what's your question to me?
Is any of this bound to happen?
So yeah, you know, to haul equipment, firefighting equipment, you know, it takes a lowboy and a semi-tractor. To haul logs, you know, it takes a semi-tractor, but they're not gonna just be coming and going like if that's what people are thinking. I mean, you know, you bring a piece of equipment in, and then it sits there till you get dispatched. So, you know, maybe 2-3 months go by. Then when the piece of equipment's dispatched, it's gone on a fire, you know. So it ain't coming and going like, you know, on a daily basis.
Can I maybe jump in and clarify? I think we've clarified to the neighbors, you don't see a lot of people here concerned about this request. This request is very different from the one you're going to hear next month, which is the one you've probably seen heard on the radio or seen flooding your inbox with emails. The other property is adjacent to the Carpenter open space and adjacent to single-family lots, a subdivision. This one isn't. So we haven't seen the same level of concern regarding trucks. I mean, they're not coming down Lebanon, they're coming off the highway on this parcel. There is a different level of impact with this rezone request than with the one off of Lebanon. So I just want to make sure that if you're hearing concerns, that they're associated with the correct parcel that you're taking action, you're looking at tonight, okay?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah.
Do we have more questions for the applicants, or are we ready to open public? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing or to public comment. Do we have anyone in the audience who would like to speak about this application? Please come to the microphone, state your name and address, and make sure that the microphone is on.
Sandra Valencia, 10400 Highway 491. I'm a neighbor, just on the fence line. I live in the county, they're in the city. The whole time that they were doing their construction, it was not any noisier than the highway. The highway is right there, and all the businesses across the street. If they have deliveries, they have large trucks that bring the deliveries to them. They're not any noisier than anybody else there.
Okay.
They've made improvements. I enjoy what they've done with the property. Nice road that they have there and all the rocks, the landscaping that they've done. It looks very nice. Just want to say they're good neighbors.
Great. Thank you for that context. Okay, anyone else for the public hearing? All right, we'll close that and move back to discussion. Okay, so I just want to reiterate that we are focusing on rezoning this property, and this is for, you know, a future use, but also in perpetuity. So if we rezone this and open it up to the other uses, I guess I just want to make sure that the access is adequate, and that, you know, I guess my concern with the auxiliary storage, even if we rezone, are we establishing then that any kind of outdoor storage still will require a conditional use permit, whether it be this business or ones in the future?
I didn't know you're asking me. I did find your map, but you closed the public hearing, so I'll leave that, the county map. So yes, if you rezone this, it becomes industrial. And uses that are permitted in the industrial district would be allowed. A newly established use would require either a site plan or a conditional use permit, depending on the use requested.
Even permitted use would require a site plan?
Yes.
Okay. And then when we're doing outreach, you know, so the neighbor, she shares a boundary with this property out in the county. Do we alert those county properties that do share a boundary for applications?
Our noticing is within 300 feet, and it doesn't matter where you live, whether you're in the city or the county, you get the notice.
Great.
I would say that if you're in the county, generally your parcels are larger, and 300 feet doesn't go as far, but yes.
Okay, as long as the county residents had a chance to see this and make comment if they wanted to. Okay, do we have any other questions, or?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that council approve on second and final reading ordinance number 1317, Series 2023, approving an application for rezoning a parcel of land located at 10206 Highway 491, Cortez, as requested by property owners Anthony Moore and Mary Lancaster.
Second.
Motion made by Dobry and seconded by Spruill.
Yazzie,
Aye.
Spruill,
Yes.
Rainey,
Aye.
Dobry,
Aye.
Kiefhoffer,
Aye.
DeHaven,
Aye.
Medina.
Aye. Okay, so we're going to move on to 5B on our agenda, which is ordinance number 1317, no, sorry, C on our agenda, 5C on our agenda, resolution number 16, series 2023, which is the conditional use permit for the property we just discussed, presented by Contract City Planner Nancy Dostal.
Okay, we're back. It's the exact same use that we've had a lot of discussion over, so I don't know how much detail you want to go over on that. I'd rather just maybe perhaps go over the criteria for a conditional use permit, and then the Planning Commission recommendation and staff recommendation on that. So with a conditional use permit, we're pivoting the criteria a little bit from the generalized, is this a good idea for this types of use in the area, to the specific of their business. And in that case, the specifics of their business is, and the criteria we need to consider are, is the conditional use compatible with adjacent existing uses and other allowed uses in the zoning district? And we're talking about appearance, scale, feature, site design, scope, landscaping, as well as the control of adverse impacts, including noise, vibration, smoke, fume, gas, dust, odor, lighting, glare, traffic, parking, and other undesirable or hazardous conditions. The second criteria is whether or not the use has incorporated design features sufficient to protect adjacent uses. Third, are any accessory uses demonstrating they're necessary and desirable, complying with criteria? Are adequate public services available, including, in this case, CDOT access? Are provisions for proper maintenance of the building, parking, loading, drive, etc. provided? And finally, does the use conform with adopted plans, hours of operation, policies, parking, etc., regulations in the code? I think we've gone over quite a bit in detail how the business operates. The adjacent uses to this business are mostly fairly impactive also, or commercial uses. I guess there are neighbors nearby who are less concerned with the impacts from this business. In this case, I maybe just jump. The Planning Commission has also recommended approval of the conditional use permit. They stated a number of conditions. I'm not going to go over those. What I'd like to go over are the staff recommendations, because we added quite a few based on the last public hearing and list of concerns on the other property. So in this case, staff is recommending approval of the conditional use permit. The first condition is one we've talked quite a bit about, that they need to meet all requirements of any utility provider. The most critical probably one here are city departments. The city engineer had some significant concerns about grading on the property. And then the other one would be CDOT, and requiring that they get at least comments from CDOT regarding the points of access and whether or not they're legally permitted for the business. We did send requests for comments to CDOT on this parcel, but we have not received any response at all on that. Second condition is one from the Planning Commission and from our agencies, that the address be clearly remarked for emergency response. The agencies were concerned, of course, that given that it's manufacturing, that there could be workplace accidents and the need to respond quickly. The applicant shall comply with the submitted project narrative at all times, and so that is what they submitted, showing their how they were going to operate and what they were doing. That they comply with the city engineer, I reiterated that, prior to establishes of use on the property, and those comments were specifically, I believe, regarding the grading that may have already occurred on the property and stabilization of slopes and erosion control. We would like to see, prior to final development of the property, a revised plan complying with landscape requirements. They did not propose any. It does appear that perhaps some has already been done. We'd like to see the plan and at least that they comply with our code requirements for landscaping of the parcel. That prior to final approval, that they propose a fencing plan that adequately screens any storage uses. I would consider that if it's not visible from the highway, that screening would not be required, but I'd like to work with the applicant on screening any storage uses from the highway itself. Item number G is sort of a just in case. There was some concern as to whether or not this property was properly subdivided. They did provide a land survey plat that may have already addressed this use, but I'd like to keep it in there as a just in case before we've had time to fully review that land survey plat. We'd like to see a plan for control of fugitive dust on the property, given that large areas are graded with bare dirt, etc. We want to make sure that neighbors aren't adversely impacted from blowing dust. So a plan from working with them on that. And then the final condition is a reference to any possible noise concerns, asking that they are requiring that they comply at all times with CRS's Colorado Revised Statute. So this is actually a requirement anyway, but we're reiterating that at all times they would be required to comply with the maximum permissible noise levels in statute. Are there questions?
I just have a general question, especially as we're talking about the specific, these specific items, concerning the kind of incongruence with the manufacturing criteria in the land use code. Like to just make note of those issues that have come up so that as we're working through land use, that's something that we address, as well as from the engineer notes, the issues with the grading permits too. I'd like to also make a note of that. So whoever needs to make that documentation, yes. I'm sure you've already thought about it, but I just wanted to reiterate.
We definitely found some things we could improve on in the code with this use.
Well, and then also in regards to wood products in particular, I would like to see in our future land use code something about wildfire, fire mitigation or, kind of that hazard mitigation.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's not very well, was difficult to interpret is outdoor storage.
Okay. And yeah, kind of everything around outdoor storage probably needs to be cleared.
Maybe defining it, open.
Yeah. Are we sure that, because it looks like they've done a lot of work, like earthwork on this property, and are we sure that it didn't get onto another property, that it's fully on their own property? Because from that picture, it looked very close to the hill of Herbal Alternative, and I just want to make sure all that work was...
That grading that you saw was actually Sanchez
okay.
dumping dirt.
Okay, it's just hard, it's unclear where the boundaries are.
Yeah, when I saw it, I was like, hey, you guys, what did that? This whole pile here was being dumped by Sanchez. I actually have it on video with his truck. So that's on their property, Sanchez storing excavated materials. This whole thing here, yeah.
Does the applicant have more they'd like to add to this? Okay.
As you can see in that picture, that property, if you looked at it over on the overlay, the dirt that I done is so far from the property line, but the property, we had it surveyed before we had any, even touched any dirt at all. We're a long, long ways, but yeah, that red dirt up there is, and that machine right there, that's all, Sanchez.
Okay.
Ours is down on the next level on that, down there on that flat tier down there. And, so no, there's no, dirt work, but also up there, so they talked about dust. I brought $50,000 worth of gravel up there now, that's all gravelled on top. The road's all gravelled. You know, a lot of this here, you know, when I started doing some of the stuff that we did, I just wanted to put it back so you can see perfect example right there where I put them rocks along there. I was just trying to make it look natural to the rest of the setting around there. I didn't realize, and a lot of this, you know, we're learning, you know, we didn't realize that type of property would have landscaping codes. You know, I just used the rocks, the natural rocks that were there, and put them on the hillside and made it look natural to what the rest of the surrounding area is. I think that was it, the two that I wanted to cover. There won't be no dust. I mean, in the future, you know, we're gonna, this fall, plant seed, and so that'll all be seeded as far as, you know, any exposed dirt, so there won't never be no dust.
And that'll be part of the 10% landscaping
Yeah.
requirements? Okay.
Yeah, and then, but one other thing, so, you know, is you can see that little band mill right there on that, maybe you can put that on that,
Right here, Nancy.
so I have the option too to go electric. I can, yeah, if you can zoom in on that right there.
Where?
Right
By the
there.
shop.
Right there, you see that orange piece of, yeah, right there, you guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
That's how little the machine is. I mean, you can tow it behind your truck. But, they make the electric motors for them too. So, you know, down in the future, if it does be that, you know, there was a noise problem, is I'd just get an electric motor. Then you wouldn't even, it wouldn't even be that 89 decibels, it would go to 0. You wouldn't even hear, you know, hear it. So, really, it's a pretty simple project. I've done this my whole life. I mean, it's in all how well you take care of your house. You know, I mean, as far as, yeah, somebody can go up there and really junk it up, but somebody can go up there and keep it clean too. I mean, if you can't tell on what, if anybody that knew what that hill looked like before, it was just a hill. It was not, it wasn't even usable. I took a property and made it usable. And, you know, we've cleaned it up, and, you know, I was, you know, trying to make it nice and all that, so. That right there, that picture right there kind of shows, you know, I mean, and we're just getting set up. I mean, I've just moved all my stuff from Alamos. Every day we're organizing and getting it a little bit better and all that. I mean, you know, come up there in a couple months, it'll be, really nice.
Well, thank you. Do we have any more questions for the applicant or, okay, I'll open the public hearing for this then, if we have anyone in the audience who would like to speak on behalf or comment on the conditional use permit. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing portion. And I just want to make sure that the conditions are going to address the CDOT access, the CDOT approval access. Okay.
She's already been talking over, so that's all right.
Okay. Okay. Great. How come we have no comments from the fire district, the emergency manager, other agencies? They just didn't respond, or are we not asking them?
I almost never get responses from the fire district anymore, so I'm not sure what's happening. We did ask them. That's right, he did come
He said there wasn't an issue.
to our planning commission meeting. Yeah, but I did not get written comments from them.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion, if it's, unless anybody has anything. I move that council approve resolution number 16, series 2023, approving a conditional use permit for property located at 10206 Highway 491, Cortez, with the following conditions. A, all requirements of utility providers, city departments, Colorado Department of Transportation, which is CDOT, and affected districts must be satisfied as outlined in adopted city codes and other regulatory documents. Specifically, all public improvements shall comply with the minimum requirements of the 2009 City of Cortez Construction Design Standards and specifications, and all requirements of CDOT for required highway improvements. B, the address shall be clearly marked for emergency response. C, the owner shall comply with the submitted project narrative at all times. D, the owner shall comply with the requirements of the city engineer prior to establishment of any uses on the property. E, prior to approval of final site plan for the development, the owner shall submit a revised plan that complies with all landscape requirements for the land use code. F, prior to approval of final site plan for the development, the owner shall propose a fencing plan that adequately screens the storage uses from Highway 491 or demonstrate that the storage will not be visible from the highway. G, pursuant to Section 4.01, a City of the Cortez Land Use Code, a subdivision plat approved by the City Council shall be required prior to the issuance of a building permit on the property. H, the owner shall submit a plan for control of fugitive dust prior to start of operation. And I, operation shall comply at all times with CRS 25-12-103, maximum permissible noise levels.
Second.
Motion made by Sproul and seconded by Yazzie.
Yazzie,
Aye.
Dobry,
Aye.
Kiefhoffer,
Aye.
DeHaven,
Aye.
Sproul,
Yes.
Rainey,
Aye.
Medina.
Aye. All right. Okay, before we move on, though, I just want to make a few comments about the industrial park. You know, I think it's come into question of whether the industrial park serves enough of the need for our economy. And so I'm just curious, do we have like an established boundary for our industrial park, or is it just kind of, you know, what is the history of that? Can we talk about like the future of that as well? And then I also want to reiterate that the county does have a massive and underutilized industrial park at G and 491.
That is mentioned, the county's industrial park is mentioned in the code, or the comp plan, but it is in the county, not in the city. Interestingly, so the city of Cortez, in their comprehensive plan, does not map future land uses. Most communities do that and show an area, maybe it's not even in the city, maybe it's on the outside limits of the city. I know that's been a hot topic in the community, so I'm not sure it's one we want to meddle with right now. And we're busy with our land use code, not with the comprehensive plan. But the comprehensive plan is old, and it is lacking in easy direction for where future land uses should go. For the most part, it says work on infill when you can. Don't go outside of city limits. But it's not the easy call that a lot of cities have, which is, we colored this one for future residential, or future commercial, future residential, future open space. You have to sort of cull through all of that, and it is hard. You can find what you want to find in the comprehensive plan. So someday you might want to think about doing an analysis of how much land do we have in commercial, how much land do we have in industrial, how much for high-density residential, what % of that's vacant. That would all be a good analysis to do now, given that it's 20-some years, almost 20-some years on from that last time that a comprehensive plan was looked at in that way. And that way we know better, okay, we are lacking in industrial land. Yeah, you know, it's not just anecdotal, of people coming in and saying, I've been looking and looking, and it's hard to find it. But it's also a little bit of a risk to say, well, we have enough. I mean, the question is it for sale? Is it suitable for the uses? At what price is it for sale? So we can give you guidelines from planning of cities, like, yeah, you should probably have about this much. But it's good to get out in the community, talk to business owners, talk to citizens, and see what is the feeling. Do we want more manufacturing? Do we want to stay tourist and retail? And all of that is something that we would do going through a comprehensive plan process that we're just not ready for, given the level of projects that we have in front of us right now.
Yeah,
I think you finish your land use code, that's probably what you want to jump into next.
Okay, yeah, I think we've tasked Rachel's department with a lot already, so.
I'm protecting
I just want to
Rachel.
have that
We
out
can't
there
do it
so
now.
that future conversations, yeah.
It's definitely a very important conversation for the city, and one that hasn't happened for a while.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. Okay, we're going to move on our agenda. 6 is unfinished business. We have none. So we're going to move on to 7, new business. 7A is a vehicle transfer to another government agency, presented by Chief Knuckles or Andy Brock. We're glad to have you here.
Button, right? There we go. So we were contacted some months ago by the employees of the town of Rico to ask if we had a police car that we were going to decommission or get rid of that they could purchase for their town. As we get new police cars in, we decommission and get rid of the older, less reliable vehicles. We currently have one, a 2010 Ford Explorer, that we were getting ready to decommission. It's got 107,000 miles on it. It wasn't assigned to an officer this last year. It was used as a spare car, a scud, as you would. So when one car went down, they would jump in that Explorer. So the Cortez Police Department has been attempting to get e-bikes purchased. We put it in the budget this year, but it wasn't, funds weren't approved. The 2010 Explorer, if we decommission it, we're looking at somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 for that vehicle. That came from Carfax documentation and talking to Darren at the city shop manager who puts all the vehicles on auction. If we decommission the vehicle, all those police upfitted items that we take out would not fit in a new vehicle. The cages, the light bars, things like that from a 2010 Explorer are made for a 2010 Explorer. So they're not going to fit in anything in 2023. There are a few exceptions to that, and those exceptions are, again, they're 13 years old minimum to start with. Most of them, they don't manufacture, they're not being made anymore, and they're certainly not being serviced. So when you talk about the siren and the radio and the radar unit, those are all pretty much on the shelf items that we're not going to put in a new vehicle. So it was kind of proposed that we approach Rico to see if we could trade this fully functioning police vehicle for an e-bike. And so we went to the city manager to see if we could move forward on this, see if we could even contact them, and we were given permission to look into it. So we talked to the town manager of Rico, and he was agreeable to purchase a brand new e-bike, and we picked out the bike. It was a Baku, I believe, mule with police lights on it, red and blues, and a battery. And when I say a battery, that's a $1,200 item right there. So he was going to purchase all that for right up $6,500 and trade it straight across for that police vehicle. And that's no money exchanged. And when I say no money exchanged, to be fair, if we were to sell a typical vehicle at auction, all that money goes back into the equipment fund. And so the equipment fund would not receive $3,000 to $5,000, whatever that vehicle may bring. But by doing that, we get a $6,500 e-bike that we can put in patrol use, and we help out a neighboring community with a police vehicle. So we would ask that the council consider making a motion to trade with no money exchanged the 2010 Ford Explorer, complete with the police upfit package for the new Baku mule bike with lights and battery. That's all. Have you got any questions of me?
No, I just wanted to say, I think this is a really creative way to partner with other people in our area, and I'd love to see you guys out there on bikes. I haven't seen a Cortez PD on a bicycle since living here, but I look forward to seeing you zoom by maybe.
It's been a minute, but that's been a successful program in the past. Thank you.
Okay. I move that council authorize the transfer of the title on the 2010 Ford Explorer unit number 469 VEN 1FM EU 7DE 8AUA 04795 to the town of Rico in exchange for a Baku Mule e-bike with police lights and one extra battery for the Cortez Police Department.
Second.
Motion made by DeHaven and seconded by Rainey.
DeHaven,
Aye.
Kiefhoffer,
Aye.
Spruill,
Yes.
Dobry,
Aye.
Rainey,
Aye.
Yazzie,
Aye.
Medina.
Aye. Okay. Moving on our agenda, we're on 8, draft resolutions and ordinances. There are none. So 9 is city attorney report.
No report.
Okay, no report. Number 10 is city manager's report.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. Following is my report for this period. I attended the meeting with the Board of County Commissioners and the Southwest Health Board of Directors, or SHS, and the Montezuma County Hospital District Board of Directors, or MCHD, on July 17th during a BOCC workshop session. I'm just mentioning that because Council previously asked us to monitor this and see what involvement we can have. I will agree that the situation with Southwest Memorial Hospital remains a concern, and we continue to monitor. But I will say that just a lot of professionalism when it came to the county commissioners as well as the MCHD board. They handled themselves very well. I feel like we're in good hands, but I also feel like they're somewhat limited on what they can do. We'll continue to monitor and support. Secondly, I met with Fire District Interim Chief Rick Spencer and the Battalion Chief Corey Elliott on July 18th. The district is currently in the process of hiring a full-time fire chief who will reportedly start soon, which may help us with our comment issue we just mentioned. The July 4th fireworks display was a big success. The city, through an MOU with the fire district, contributed $15,000 towards the purchase of the fireworks, and we look forward to continuing our strong partnership with the Fire Protection District. Also, the Cortez Police Department secured a $235,000 grant from the Department of Justice to purchase and install mobile data terminals in all police vehicles. An additional $80,000 in battle funds, and that's the acronym for Beat Auto Theft Through Law Enforcement, has been applied for through the Colorado Auto Theft Prevention Authority. If granted, this will help fund additional printers and e-citations that will also need to be installed in those vehicles. To be quite honest, this is long overdue equipment that's needed for the police department, and we'll continue our efforts to accomplish this need. Also of note, our 2024 budget process starts on August 9th at the staff level. So pending questions, that's my report, Council.
You said budget season it starts August, what?
Correction, August 9th at the staff level. That's when we start our training, and we'll move through that in earnest.
Okay, thank you. All right, okay, so we'll move on to 11 on our agenda, City Council Committee reports. 11A is the mayor's report on the workshop. For our workshop, we had an executive session for an evaluation of our city attorney. I think that's all that was on our workshop. So then we'll move on to other board reports, 11B on our agenda.
No, no,
Lydia?
I was able to attend the library board meeting, and we just started a discussion of the director's 5-year plan.
Great. Robert?
Our next historic preservation board meeting is next week.
I do have a few updates from the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. The Recreation Center competition pool was closed due to equipment failure. 4th of July, John Brooks brought in 2 music groups and 3 food vendors to lead up the fireworks on the 4th. The Balloon Rendezvous Friday Night Glow, which is August 4th, will be a little bit more organized and event-like. We do have adult softball this year. Kind of came together, I think, at the last minute, and there's just a few teams, but there is something happening there. And then just a kind of a shout out to some new staff. John Turnbaugh, the Recreation Center Coordinator, Katie Meyer, the Rec Supervisor, Garth Scharnhorst, RC Maintenance Tech. So we're filling all the vacancies too.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt.
On July 20th, we had a dispatch advisory board meeting, and Kelly Koski gave a financial presentation. Is that it?
Great. All right, thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to 12 on our agenda, other items of business, executive session.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move that council move into executive session for a conference with legal counsel for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions pursuant to CRS Section 24-6-4024B, and for discussions of a personnel matter pursuant to CRS Section 24-6-4024F1, all of which specifically relate to a personnel matter involving the city manager, who has not requested the discussion be in open session.
Second.
Motion made by Dobry and seconded by Yazzie.
DeHaven,
Aye.
Spruill,
Yes.
Dobry,
Aye.
Yazzie,
Aye.
Kiefhoffer,
Aye.
Rainey,
Aye.
Medina.
Aye. All right. And then I just want to say to staff, I know it's a lot to be here late on these nights, especially when you're not on our agenda, but we really appreciate seeing you here and you being, seeing how we work and being on the same page that everything's going on. So thank you guys for always being here. We appreciate it.
Second. Second. Second.
Okay. All right, the time is now 10:26 PM, and the executive session has concluded. The participants in the executive session were council members Arlena Yazzie, David Rainey, Lydia DeHaven, Matt Kiefhofer, Dennis Spruill, and Robert Dobry, as well as Special Counsel Bill Kelly, and at the commencement of the executive session, City Manager Drew Sanders and City Attorney Patrick Coleman. For the record, if any person who participated in the executive session believes that any substantial discussion of any matters not included in the motion to go into the executive session occurred during the executive session, or that any improper action occurred during the executive session in violation of the open meeting law, I ask that you state your concerns for the record. All right, so the next agenda item is,
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
public
There's no more
participation,
public
13 on the agenda. Seeing no one in the audience, we'll close the public participation section, and then do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second. Motion made by Dobry and seconded by DeHaven.
Kiefhofer,
Aye.
Rainey,
Aye.
Spruill,
Yes.
Yazzie,
Aye.
Dobry,
Aye.
DeHaven,
Aye.
Medina.
Aye.